Welcome to the Talking Timelines podcast. We are four women with 4 points of view and 4 accents with one common goal: to share insights and information about what's going on in the world from a higher consciousness perspective. No BS, no PC, just lots of ideas that you won't hear on mainstream media. We chat, we laugh, and most of all, we shed and share light. Join us each week as we talk timelines.
Hello everyone, welcome to Talking Timelines episode 35 today. And today we're going to be looking at some pretty heavy subjects, but we really feel, we've discussed it before the show, that we think that we need to bring this information to people to empower you. And I'd also like to remind you that we are talking about separate timelines. It's not the timeline myself and the rest of the team are on, and how to get out of certain timelines and how people don't even realize which timelines they're attached to. And we'll also be touching on possession, particularly in children, which Laura and I as therapists and practitioners have been picking up on, and see where it goes there. I also want to touch on data protection and where is our data protection that we used to have. So first of all, I'm going to pass us over to Laura, because how this conversation started between us the other day. You met somebody, Laura. What was going on? Remind me.
With the child you're talking about?
Yeah.
It was a client's daughter.
Okay.
So basically, I had a client come to me. I didn't know really anything about her. She signed up to do a session with me, and then what came out is how distraught she was and how she wasn't able to handle what was going on with her daughter, which I found out her daughter is almost 13 years old and she's been attempting suicide. Well, first, before attempting suicide, she's been cutting herself. So she's doing all this self-harm. There are these, I guess, TikTok or other, I don't know, there's websites where people talk about cutting. These kids are talking about it with each other. They're talking about suicide, which obviously is extremely, I mean, as a parent, I can't imagine anything more devastating. And she would threaten things and be manipulative and kind of promising things, and then she would go sneak. And they're very clever how they do things. And this particular girl she was hospitalized for 2.5 weeks because they had to bring her in. They really thought she was going to do something real serious harm or kill herself. And then she's now spending 5 weeks in a residential, kind of like a psychiatric residential place. She is on some sort of an antidepressant, a low dose. But when I was working with the mother and we were talking about it, this was an in-person session. All I kept hearing was first of all, if there hasn't been any trauma early on. I mean, she was telling me, yes, the parents are been separated and whatever. But I mean, these are things that I hear all the time. But I'm thinking, where would this come from? This level of self-harm and wanting to, at 12 to 13 years old, to want to kill yourself. How do to me, things weren't adding up. And I really felt strongly that there was some kind of entity or energetic attachment. And that's when I reached out to you, Janine. I'm like, okay, what does this sound like to you? Have you worked with this before? Because that was really my inclination. And you confirmed that that's what you saw going on. So it becomes kind of tricky because the parent needs to be open to, first of all, themselves and how they can handle it. And that's what we were doing, is basically was working on kind of her energy and kind of getting her out of this, her being actually more stable to handle this. But the work really has to be with the child, which gets very tricky when you're dealing with young children. But it's devastating. It's heartbreaking to hear this. And then I had another client too, which also was kind of a victim of this. So yeah, we just thought this was something really important to talk about because it's happening to people all ages, but specifically when it's targeted children,
Yeah.
um,
They're going to get lost in the mental health system and drugged for the rest of their life.
oh, they're going to be
Because
drugged, exactly.
the damage the drugs do, apart from poisoning their bodies, they open up their chakra system because, when you're sedated in any way, your chakras open up. It's that floaty kind of feeling. So that allows entities into the system anyway. So when you were telling me about it, I could see it looked like a little gremlin that was on her shoulders, like wrapped around her. And I would say size wise, if she was 10, the gremlin would be the size of a 3-year-old. If you tried to put it into, some kind of visual size, like it's on her shoulders, like she's got a monkey on her back kind of thing. And it's in her ear. And I've seen this before, and this was really early on in my career as a therapist, which I'm going back well over 20, I think this is my 23rd year, 20 years ago, when somebody came into the clinic that I worked in, and there was this kid messing about, 10-year-old, round about that, just being really hyper and, like a 2 or 3-year-old, really. And I asked what's going on, and I got told, oh, she's got behavioral problems, at school, won't sit still. And I said, well, there's a little entity attached to that kid. And the psychologist who the mother was going to see said to me, well, I can't tell that to the mother.
Mhm.
She's going to think I'm crazy. And I said, so you're just quite happy to give let a child believe that they've got psychological problems for the rest of their life? Or are you going to tell the truth? I was annoyed about it, but that's me. You all know what I'm like. I speak up. And that was it. I never, nothing was ever done about it. So children are getting lost in the mental health system when an hour with somebody that has worked with things like this. I mean, I've studied hypnotherapy, counseling, NLP, energy healing, I've worked with, studied with shamans, spiritual, removing spiritual entities and all this kind of stuff, which I use in my practice. It's just not talked about until people find me, basically. But when people do question it, I will remind them, particularly if they're religious Christians, Jesus cast out demons from the sick. Why is that ignored when it happens in real life? It's like Jesus is this amazing healer, and what he was doing all through the Bible. When it comes to this world and this reality, it's treated as la la land, you know. And there is in the independent newspaper online, I can't remember the year now, it might have been 2015, the Pope Francis, declared that exorcisms were now going to be a charitable service offered by the church, and 600 priests were trained in the art of exorcism. This is reality, and you say it to people, and they look at you like you're crazy and go, "You've been watching too many movies." But
Well,
this,
I think
it's
also it
real.
opens, yeah, and it opens up a whole like the spiritual, like, it's ghosts, it's entities. Oh, it's evil spirits. Like, oh, come on. People I think they're afraid of it.
Hmm.
It's very, scared. What? I'm vulnerable to this, my child. So they don't really understand it. So I think a lot of it is fear. And then they don't know, then it just presents this whole, well, I can't see it, so how do I know it's true? And it's, it gets into like really like witchcraft. It gets into stuff that people very easily dismiss,
They
you know.
easily dismiss or they're scared of it. And then I've had conversations with people like this over the years, and I say, okay, do you believe in witchcraft? And they go, no, it's just black magic's. And even the ones that go, well, if you don't believe in it, it can't happen to you, it's so naive because I say to them, well, go online and look up what happens if you get practicing black magic in certain places in the Middle East. It's a death sentence. That's the justice system in the Middle East, black magic, death sentence. So why would they be killing people, executing people, if black magic isn't a real thing as well? So you've got online with independent newspapers, fact checked and everything. You've got exorcisms, a charitable service offered by the church. You've got people being executed if they're caught practicing witchcraft or black magic in the Middle East. People need to wake up to these things that the documentary we talked about last time, the mind control one, his next documentary is about how black magic is being used by the system on people. And to me, it's just, one step away from the NLP that people are using on their audiences to get them to spend money at the end of their speeches. I don't think it's right. I think if I was in an audience all day, let me explain what I mean. If you go to watch somebody speak and all day they're getting you to stand up and go, yes, yes, do you want this? Yes. And your mind gets programmed. We talked about it last week. 2 to 5 repetitions programs something into your consciousness. At the end of the day, when they say, "Do you want to buy this product?" your mind has been manipulated all day to say the word yes. I don't agree with it. I don't use it in my own business. And if I had, I'd probably been multimillionaire by now, but I've got a level of integrity and a line that I won't cross. And that's a part of it. People say, well, it's just business. It's not. If somebody done that to me, I would be annoyed that I'd been
Mhm.
manipulated. If they said
Mhm.
up front, oh, by the way, we use NLP practices in our presentation that may affect your decisions and we're honest about it, fair enough. But that's not the way it works. So all of this stuff, people need to become more aware of what's going on. There's another, and I've got permission by the mother to share this one. This is so far out, people are going to be mind blown at this story. A client of mine asked me to do some work on her 26-year-old son through her as a surrogate. And I've worked on her adult children and I've worked on, young children through the parent as surrogates before. And basically, I said, what happened to him when he was 7 years old? There was a trauma. And she said, oh yeah, I remember his sister was 9 and he was 7, and a 13-year-old babysitter let him watch a really bad horror film like Nightmare on Elm Street or something like that. And he was really traumatized for a long time afterwards. I said, well, what happened there is he had something that shamans would call a soul fragmentation. This is what happens with soldiers and people that go through trauma, PTSD. It's when a part of your emotional body is so shocked that it fractures your energy body and the emotional body jumps out of you. And that's where they're saying I was besides myself comes from, literally. And also people say things like, I've never felt the same since then. I feel like a piece of me is missing. This is a soul fragment. I call it soul fragmentation. So this child had soul fragmented from the fear, and he'd actually gone into the dimensional realm of the movie and was stuck in that dimension in the movie that he was watching. I teach astral projection and this type of stuff and have been doing it my whole life. I've written 3 books about it, of my work and what I've experienced. So obviously I was the right person for her to help get her son's fragment back. And I did. I astral projected, got the child's spirit body, healed it and integrated it back into his adult body while he was asleep in the middle of the night through his mother. So this is the kind of thing that can happen to children if your kids are watching horror movies, if your babysitter's allowing your children to watch horror movies. People need to know the
They
damage.
also they also
This,
need to know because so much of it that goes right to medication.
yeah,
Right to medication. This is what they do, and then they become lost in the pharmaceutical
yeah.
loop.
Exactly. So all of this stuff, and particularly now, kids have got access to so much stuff on the internet now. They can get past adult parental controls and things like that. They go to their friend's house and they've got an older friend and phones at schools and stuff like that. People need to be really, really careful about what their children are watching. I've found out in the last month that Australia apparently are banning social media for under 16s and Poland are banning it for under 15s. And I think it's a good thing. I'm glad that it wasn't around when my son was growing up. He's 34 this year. He's not that way inclined anyway. He doesn't like it. He doesn't like texting and stuff like that. But I think it's a danger to children's emotional health, how their psychological health, how they see one another, all these, selfies of people looking like they've got great lives and everything else, when really it's all fake. The AI is just so difficult to distinguish what's real and what's not real anymore, that children are vulnerable. And I think social media and even things like YouTube, they need to be banned from using it.
Well, you know what else? And I've noticed this just with myself is that it's not only all those things you just mentioned, but it's also the amount of information that's being thrown at you. It's funny because I saw someone say recently that social media has become the new TV, which really caught my attention because I have a TV. I don't turn it on. I don't even have any, like, I never turn it on. I'm not a TV person. Like movies, I'll
Hmm.
watch. Usually they're movies that I've seen, they're older movies, but I'll find all of a sudden I'll get lost on social media and
Hmm.
it is filling the exact same purpose of what I would when I used to use TV for. It's like this, kill some time or to numb out, whatever it is. And that's exactly what social media is doing. But
Yeah,
the thing that I've noticed is that it's really not social anymore. It's really information being thrown at you.
yeah,
And I look at this and I'm like, I don't want to see any more of this. And I don't want to see this. And I don't want, and then, with the health stuff and the fear and I'm like, wow. Like I've really noticed that it's just this massive amount of information is being thrown at us
yeah,
that our nervous systems can't handle.
exactly. Yeah,
And when you think
overload,
about
system
kids are
overload.
getting, we never had this thing when we were young.
No, we were out running around in the park, bare feet, kicking footballs around, playing skipping ropes, climbing trees,
Using our
connecting with,
imagination.
yeah, connecting with nature. We played marbles and we made daisy chains and all sorts of stuff. And it was good for us. It's good for your health. You're getting grounded and all these other things. You've got children now that have got more asthma and diabetes and all these things linked to inflammation in the system and stuff like that, mainly because they're not grounded. They're wearing sneakers all day long, which disconnect you, from the earth and stuff like that. So there's a lot going on in the world at the moment that people are just taking for granted while we're moving into this future and it's AI and it's technology and you've got to go with it, roll with it. You don't have to roll with it. It's a choice. It is a choice. There's a brilliant movie that we watched last year called Captain Fantastic about a guy who teaches his kids to, read books and climb, rock climbing and all that stuff. And that's a good movie to watch. In the end, he kind of wasn't so strict on them, but it just shows you the difference. His children were geniuses, athletes and geniuses, all four of them, because he kept them away from all that stuff. They got real books, and he would question them what they've read, read a book, and they didn't have to write essays or stuff like that like you do in school, but he would talk to them. They spoke to one another over dinner instead of go now. Kids got their phones at the dinner table. Children are in cafes and McDonald's, wherever they're on their phones, walking down the streets, heading the phone. The amount of kids that walk in front of us when we're out and about in the car with their head in a phone and don't even look to see if there's a car coming. They just walk across the stripe in the road, expecting you to stop. No awareness of what's going on around them. It's called attention economy. And it's mind control. It's what we were talking about before. It's mind manipulation, repetition, and it's changing society for the worst.
Mhm.
Definitely. So was that, and with that conversation, I started thinking about, remember how we used to have to be promised our data was being protected and things like that. And now it's the opposite. It's all being accumulated. I've noticed in the last 3 months, having conversations with either my partner, we've got a double office with two desks. And then what we're talking about, what he's looking at on his computer, will start popping up on my computer and they're not even synced to one another. Having conversations with my friends, and then the next day I start getting adverts or stuff popping up on my Instagram that was to do with the conversation I had yesterday. And it's really blatantly obvious now that my phone is listening into my conversations. Um, this isn't data protection, this is spying on everyone and everything we say, everything we watch, everything we look at on the internet. If you're shopping on the internet's getting stored. So I go and look up just annoying things like hammers and screws just to annoy them. I've got no idea. I don't shop online. I like to feel things. I like to go into stores, I like to feel the material. I like to try things on. I've never liked shopping online, so it's not a big deal to me, but I know people that won't go anywhere else. Um, and all of that is we're losing our freedom. We're being treated like an algorithm, and it's not right. I don't agree with any of it. You all know I don't like AI. It's a problem. I think it could be used for some really useful, helpful things for people, but the way it's going, there's more and more people out there saying about the dangerous side of it. And remember, this is all different timelines. So if you want the AI timeline where you're going to get microchipped and you can't, your credit score system, by all means go down that timeline. I don't use AI in my business. I'm just setting up a new network thing, and I wanted it stated on my network profile that I do not use AI in my business in any way, shape, or form, because there are going to be people like me that are looking for companies that are not AI linked, that are real people that write their own stuff, because you can feel it. There's no soul in the writing at all. So, choosing your timeline, I wanted to talk about. I know there's a lot coming out of me today, but the girls know that I've got a lot to share today. There is someone I know who's a freelance journalist that yesterday put something on her Facebook page about a certain person out there. Let's call him the Computer Geek. You all know who I'm talking about. Um, who has been taken to court in Amsterdam for basically poisoning people with the jabs. And it's all come out in the courtroom about satanic stuff and the that it's an attempt to sterilize girls and cause abortions and depopulate the planet. This is all coming out, and the reason I know it's true is because the woman that is the journalist, I know her personally. I've worked with her in the past, 15 years ago. So I know it's not AI. When I've watched her videos, I know what she's written. She's saying it live, she's saying it in writing. And normally I wouldn't share this. There's so much AI out there now, but I know this person and I know that she's telling the truth. It's all coming out in the courtroom, and she's saying it's pretty obvious that the courts are involved with covering it up because nobody's being prosecuted, even though it's coming out. The truth is being said in the courtroom, but they're getting off with it. Now, this needs to be shared, that this is what's going on, because it's obvious that the judicial system is corrupt. The lawyers that are in there defending people when they haven't got a case to defend them, they're obviously guilty. If you watch certain, I was sharing a few months back and I must remember to put it under this, the interview with the Australian senator and the two top doctors in the world. One of them is the second most published doctor on the planet, and he's a medical doctor, an immunologist, and a virologist professor who's talking about this is genocide and that none of these vaccines should be stuck into anyone. That if there's a virus and they develop a vaccine 6 months later and the virus has already mutated to something new, the vaccine's no good because it's out of date, and so on and so forth. And this is a top doctor. And still, people go into cognitive dissonance. They don't want to know the truth. That goes back into the mind control documentary and the black magic at that his documentary that is coming out now. Because when I meditate on this, and I'm getting why, particularly the men, why aren't they listening? When we're talking to them, I get told it's black magic to block their ears from hearing the truth. So this is what's going on out there. So if you're trying to tell people this is what's going on and they're not listening, don't waste your breath, is the answer to that. Get black magic out of your DNA, out of your energy field, so it can't be used against you. And this is why I wanted to talk about the demonic timeline. That, people are saying this is all about the demonic timeline, the child trafficking demonic timeline. If you want to get that out of your system, you really need to get anything to do with religion out of your system completely. So, system rewrite, deleting anything to do with spirituality and religion that was linked to gods, demons, devils, Satan, Lucifer, Prince of Darkness. They're all different programs in the simulation that we know as the Matrix. So if they're activated in your system, even if you feel they're dormant, you could be an atheist now, but you're multidimensional. If any parts of you in the past have, been religious, those programs are still active in your system on a multidimensional level. So the best way to be working with that is either find somebody like us to work with, or sun gazing is the free way of reprogramming your system. We've talked about it before. So it's from sunrise to an hour afterwards, that first hour, and sunset to an hour before. So the last hour before sunset and the first hour after sunrise. So you sit in the sun,
I
preferably
thought
with
it's after sunset.
no, it's before. You've got to be in the sun. So once the sun set,
Oh,
it's
right. That's
gone.
right. That's right. That's right. After
Yeah.
it would be down.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So before the sun goes down and just after the sun rises. So bare feet on the grass if you can, sitting in the sun, and you stare at the sun. And it's not going to harm you. Quite the opposite. It will, but all that light will go into your pineal gland, and you can send that into your whole system with your intention and ask your higher consciousness to delete the programs for you that are trapping you in this negative timeline. So either the AI timeline, which I think is hooked up to the metaverse timeline we talked in episode 1. If you want to know the 6 main timelines are, you can go into episode 1 of Talking Timelines and listen to the first ever episode we did of this show. And just sit there and imagine the sun's rays coming into your system like a laser and deleting the programs and filling you with that beautiful, pure source energy into your system. So rewriting your own blueprint. It's like going into your computer and defragging the viruses in your computer. It's just exactly the same thing that's going on. That's the easiest way to do it. If you feel that you need help, there are people like Laura and myself that are into reprogramming people's consciousness for them and things like that. But that's the way to escape that timeline. Just ignoring it isn't the way. Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is ignorance. And people are told to ignore. I remember when the first time I went to Sri Lanka, it was just after the tsunami. So it was probably around about 2009, 2010, something like that. It was a good time, a long time ago. Um, and I met somebody when I was sitting by the pool. I had a book. I went on my own for 2 weeks. I took a book about the crystal skulls. And I was reading this book, and this woman said to me, "Oh, you don't need to do healing. Why do you waste your time healing yourself and people?" And I'm like, wow.
Mm.
How programmed is she? Somebody's obviously told her, you don't need to do healing. Just be, just get on with life, be happy, and not understanding that we are complex, multi-dimensional fields of consciousness in a collective matrix system, a simulation that we're programming. We are the programmers. We're also the architects. And that's what we hope to get across with this series of talking timelines,
Well,
because it,
also, yeah, a lot of it is also by default. Like
yeah,
just to make the clarification, we're programming it if we're conscious enough to actually, do that. But most of the people, I think, are operating on the default that the matrix is programming.
yeah,
So that's also where it gets really complicated too, is
yeah,
that we're not even aware of the scope that we are programmed and what we're projecting at. That's the other thing too, is that, I mean, if you really get into like the quantum physics of it, it's like where everything is just frequency and
mm-hmm,
nothing is solid. And we are our belief, our intention, or our, witnessing of something makes it actually have form.
mm-hmm,
And that's the thing that's just so wild. I mean, when you really get in and think about it, like everything is a hologram, everything is a projection. And you could argue forever for people like that. What are you talking about?
yeah.
And
Well,
that's the thing too. It's a lot harder for a lot of people to wrap their heads around.
it is hard for people to wrap their heads around. People that have gone down the ayahuasca and this, mushroom psilocybin and DMT route get to see the holographic makeup. You actually get to see the hologram. And once you've had a trip like that, a journey like that, plant, journey like that, you're changed for life because you realize that what we're saying here is absolutely true. And it's basically like we're in some kind of computer system that our sensory perception projects an image that we think is and feels solid because we're programmed to feel this table is solid. When in actual fact, none of it is. It's all just light and code.
And on top of that, we've also have lost our memory that we
Mm,
actually know what's really true. So we
exactly.
come in with a blank slate, although there are people that do can remember certain things and they can access different dimensions, but for the most part, the memory is wiped out
Yeah,
so that we believe this is to be real.
yeah. So it's complex, but the way we're heading, certainly in the next, what we're in 26 now, the next 5, 6 years, massive, massive changes are happening on this planet. And there are people out there that are full on to the conspiracy stuff. And the trouble with that is it drags you into a rabbit hole that is all consuming because it's massive. There's the rabbit hole of the reptilian agenda and the draconian agenda, and these, people that believe that ETs are in positions of power and stuff like that. That is a timeline because
Mhm.
people believe it. And if it's in your consciousness, again, if you want to get reptilian, draconian, sit in the sun, ask for it to be burnt out of your consciousness. If you're the kind of person that wants to go for ayahuasca or psilocybin, you can set your intention. You want that deleted in your consciousness as well, because all of these different timelines do exist.
Mm.
The timeline that I've been creating, because we are creators, doesn't have any of that stuff in it. But it's like you're in it, but you're not of it. So it's going on. You can meet two people that are sitting in the same cafe and they're living completely different realities. One's in a place where it's locked down and so on and so forth, and the other's in a place where it's complete freedom. We've got our data protection again. Schools are not programming children to be 90% in their left brain, in the masculine brain, and dulling down the creative brain, which is the feminine side of the brain, which is the intuitive, where you're being lied to. This is BS because that
Mm.
part of your brain is activated. And even beyond that, integrating the two hemispheres of the brain, which is what I do with my brain repair audio. It actually brings them into balance. And when you've got full brain working, you're on it. You're being creative and the logic at the same time. It's all functioning at the same time. And BS when you hear it. It's like your body reacts to it. It tells you that this isn't right. Don't go down that rabbit hole. So be very careful at home if you have woken up and you're looking at all this conspiracy and all these people that are telling you you're a victim of this, that, and they're doing this to us, they're trying to kill us. That's not the case. They're no good to anyone dead. There's no money to be made out of corpses apart from a quick funeral. So there is stuff being done for sure, but you've got the power to step away from that.
And actually,
And
the fear they create is actually the most dangerous thing
explain why.
because that's, first of all, that's what they feed off of. And it's
Yes.
very easy to put people in a state of fear. So even if nothing happens, there's always this event, the next thing that's going to happen. So ever since 2020, because I think I've mentioned it a number of times on the podcast that I did go down that rabbit hole and spend hours and hours listening to YouTubes and trying to absorb as much information as I can. And what happens is it's this, oh, this is going to happen on this date, and this is going to happen, and they're going to do this. So it's like dangling the carrot, but the carrot is the fear of an event that's going to happen. So you're always
Yes.
on edge. This is the lower vibrational energy, which they're feeding off of, and you're much more easy to control and to
Yeah.
comply when they give you instructions to do things.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. When you can turn that off and just say, or just kind of have the, yeah, maybe we'll see, kind of a neutral attitude towards it all, you're actually much better off than
Yeah.
if you're following the ping pong.
Exactly. That's the predictive programming and the lowering your vibrational frequency, which is if you're everyone out there must have come across people that are bright and shiny, and when they come into the room, they light the room up. And then other people, they come into the room and you're like, oh no, here comes doom and gloom, the energy vampire. Who come and they dump all their negativity on you and drain you of your energy, and then they go off to somebody else and do the same thing. That's frequency. That frequency projects your reality, basically.
Mhm.
What's in your field, depending on, your higher or lower frequency, is what's creating your future. So if you're kept fear that there's the world's a nasty, dark place and da da da. Guess what you're going to project onto your screens of your reality? More negativity. You're going to meet people that are telling you a negative storylines and so on and so forth. And it accumulates into this dark reality. You can listen to it and go, not in my reality. I'm not accepting that in my reality. And you can shield yourself from it. You can raise your frequency by eating well, being happy, listening to good quality music like classical music. Mozart cancels mind control, by the way, as does good quality cannabis. It also cancels mind control. That's why it's been, interfered with and cut with other things to get people addicted, um, and stuff like that. So there are many different choices that you can make in your life that are going to raise you up or they're going to drag you down. And these entities, these lower beings, whether they're human or not, and some are and some are not, they thrive on fear. They call it
Mhm.
loosh. And people that are in fear are very, very easy to control and manipulate. People that have had poor education are very easy to program and manipulate as well. So read, educate yourself. If you didn't do well in school, get reading out, learn stuff, open your mind and start learning how to live, go to the library and get a book on how to live a great life or something like that. They do exist. There's lots of books that teach you this stuff in various ways. I just tend to look at it the way the way that I do look at it. Laura and I are on the same page in a lot of things, but we can explain things differently to you.
Mhm.
And Lisa and Susan, they look at it in another way. They're very astute with the politics that are going on in the world and so on and so forth. So just be aware that what you're seeing out there, you don't have to accept that as your reality. Choose your reality.
Also, I want to add too, just to tag on what you were just saying, look, notice what triggers you.
Mm-hmm.
So you may hear something, and again, I notice this with myself, and when I always use myself as wow, if I'm experiencing this with my training and my awareness, whatever, then you better believe other people are as well.
Yeah.
And I'll notice, I'll hear something, and if it triggers a fear in me, and about some future, I stop and I just say, well, wait a minute, because this can happen so unconsciously that
Yeah.
we're triggered, we take on the fear, and then we start worrying about something, and then I just say, well, wait a minute, you don't even know if this is true, if this, and it may be something personal, maybe like, oh, they're gonna come after this, they're doing this, and then just to say, well, wait a minute, like you don't know this is true, you don't know this is going to happen, this is a future thing, and you can almost bring yourself back into the present and kind of just what, almost say, wow, is this really true? Is there something?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can dismiss it, now, granted, it's not always easy to do that, especially when you trigger, because many times these are subconscious triggers from previous stuff, as we've talked about. So it may not always be that easy to switch it off, but if you can question it and just say, wow, why am I feeling anxious?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, is there, do I actually have something to be anxious about, or is this an outside force that's causing me to be anxious?
Yeah.
It requires some checking in. It requires some self-awareness, but it's a really great exercise to do to see if it's actually true for you,
Mm-hmm.
coming from you, or if it's an outside force that's affecting you.
How do you what advice would you give people at home to overcome that anxiety if they're feeling it in their system?
Is it something, well, like I said, I would have them question, is this really something that, there's external things that are going on that are, it's difficult. People have concerns and they're justified in having those concerns. But when it's something that may or may not happen to you, always bringing yourself back to the present. I mean, one of the things I do in my psyche process is a stress trigger balance where we change the perception of this stress trigger. So you
Mm-hmm.
actually taking out whatever's causing that fear. But that being said, I would tell people bring yourself back to the present and just say, first of all, you're always okay in the present. That's an
Mm-hmm.
Eckhart Tolle thing from Power of Now and was always, and it's a very, very powerful thing actually to just say, I'm always okay in the present. And
Mm-hmm.
is this thing that I'm worried about, is this really true? Or you know what? Is it worth giving up my energy in this present moment to something that may or may not happen? Because that's a
Mm-hmm.
future now.
Mm-hmm.
It may happen, it may not happen. Bring yourself back to the present and say, I'm okay. And actually to shift your focus, change your focus on something else. I mean, that's the easiest way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but it takes awareness first, just not to fall into, because a lot of people their nervous systems are fried right now. And
Absolutely.
like what we were talking about earlier, there's just so much information coming at us that people don't, they don't have that stillness. They don't have the quiet. So they're constantly being bombarded. So their nervous systems are always like, look here, be afraid of that. This is true, that's true. So they're kind of losing that being able to tune in and
Mm-hmm.
ask, is this really something I need to pay attention to, or is this something that's not affecting me? It's
Yeah.
kind of
And
practice.
is this really mine?
Is this mine?
Yeah. Because sometimes, like, if you've got a little bit of fear, then there's a cloud of fear wherever you are. It's going to go and attach to your fear. So sometimes you pick up what's going on around you. I remember that happening to me very early on in my journey into this, this kind of work. And it was somebody having a panic attack in the next aisle in a supermarket. And I started to feel the panic attack. I was like, where the hell's this coming from? I'm not panic attack kind of person. And I was picking up on this girl in the next aisle and that I noticed later on. So checking in to see if it's yours, yeah. And the importance of just being in nature and being quiet every day.
Mhm.
Just having some quiet time every day, even if it's closing your eyes and listening to the birds through headphones, and just taking yourself out of the hustle and bustle of everyday life and just allowing your nervous system to be calm.
Mhm.
It's really important. Another quick helpful one for people at home. It's not easy for us to give you our techniques because certain techniques that we use, you need to have experience to use them and you need to be in the right environment. But we do like to give you something. The other one, you can, let's say that you're having a moment where you're feeling really fearful or anxious. You can visualize that anxiety in a balloon and imagine you're holding on to it and then visualize it, just let it go and see it floating away from you is another really easy one as well. Um, and if you're with somebody, I know a lot of children are feeling anxiety these days and they're having a panic attack or something like that. Get them to tell you 5 things they can see in the room. What's on the wall? Is there a picture? Can you see out the window? Are there any cars? Because it changes the brain from, being in that mode into another state. And it can quickly overcome the panic attack by changing the brain's focus. That's another helpful one that anyone can do. You don't need to be a rocket scientist
Right.
to
And for
to
those, for the, go ahead, finish.
no, go on.
I was going to say, for those that are a little bit more cerebral and want something, um, what you can also do is understand that worrying about something does not change the outcome. As a matter of fact, it gives you the outcome you don't want, right? So for those that like to kind of like really understand and think, people think if I worry about something, oh my God, I need to worry about it because it's something important and I
Mm,
care about, like worrying about another person is the worst thing you can do. People
mhm.
think, oh, but I'm caring about them. No, actually, you are envisioning what it is exactly you don't want to happen.
Yeah,
So if you're worried about something, remind yourself, worrying does not affect the outcome. It robs you of the present. It actually gives you more of that. It keeps you that low energy. So if you remember, wow, it doesn't affect the outcome. So actually, I can relax about this. And then you're actually in a clearer head to actually make different decisions or to actually alleviate, the potential problem that
yeah,
may occur anyway. But
yeah,
that's more of like the thinking, kind of approach.
exactly. Okay, well, I think we've covered quite a bit today. Hopefully, it's been useful for people at home. Again, I'm going to ask you guys to please do share this with people you may think are open enough to, listen to something that's different and very useful. It, the world is a changing place. There's a lot going on out there at the moment. One of the most important things that everyone needs is to learn to meditate and just be quiet and in nature. And I think that's why there's so much mental health problems in the world is they're not looking after their spirit. The spirit is ignored, and we are mind, body, and spirit. So taking care of your inner spirit, your energy, And that's where the nature and the meditation comes in and the quiet time. Okay, well, thanks very much for listening at home, and we'll see you next time on Talking Timelines. Bye for now.
Okay, bye everyone. Thanks for joining us. Disclaimer: the content in this podcast is intended for educational and informational purposes only. The views, opinions, and information shared do not necessarily represent those of the hosts, but is provided for additional perspectives. None of the hosts are medical professionals, so we do not dispense medical advice. Please consult your healthcare professional for any health-related issues. And thank you for listening to Talking Timelines.